good evening, and thank you for tuning in to 88.1 FM WHPR. This is Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie. How's everybody doing in Detroit today? I hope everyone is doing fine. I know I had a wonderful day. To see one of the generational curses broken in my family made it a very, very emotional day, but a very, very good day. So I'm thanking God for that. And I'm excited to talk to you about our topic tonight, suicide. And in the studio, we have with us Mrs. Candace Streeter. Say hello to everyone, Candace.
Hey, everybody.
And we have Trisha Duckworth, who is also the producer, and you know I have to drag her kicking and screaming from behind the scenes, but she came out from behind the scenes today to share her testimony with you as well. Say what's up to Detroit, Trisha.
What up, Detroit? Hope you're doing good this evening.
Yes. So, and I also want you to know throughout the evening, we will be hearing Trisha's music. She is so talented. She's an actress. She's a singer. She's the social worker for our agency, SOAR. She's the producer of this show, and she's so much more. My sister, my teammate, and my friend. So let's talk a little bit about suicide. We hear so much more about homicide than suicide. And that's not to say that suicides don't happen very often, because they do. But it's the type of tragedy that people don't really like to talk about. The subject is so taboo. It used to even be in some churches or some religious affiliations. They would tell you going to hell. You know, people that complete suicide, they going to hell. And you couldn't convince them otherwise. I don't believe that, but, you know, some people believe that, and maybe they still do. With a murder, you obviously have a villain. You know, there is someone who committed some act, and there's a villain, and you tell this story. Well, with suicide, it's a little bit different. So we're going to talk about some of the things that perpetuate that, because there are some villains associated with suicide, but it doesn't look like a murder. You know, with a murder, someone has actually shot you or stabbed the person or something of that nature. With suicide, it's a little bit different, but there are some villains. There are some things, people, places, and situations that perpetuate suicide. If a person is already extremely depressed, there are other things that can put that person over the edge. And so we're going to talk about that. So, Trisha, let's start a little bit with you. We're going to do in this segment things that perpetuated your suicidal ideation. Can you share?
Sure. So I would say a lot of people are going to find this funny, but it's just the truth. I would say one of the biggest things that perpetuated my suicidal ideation was religion. Being in a church coming up that was very aggressive in their viewpoints and the things that you could do and the things that you couldn't do. And it was just a lot, because it was like this bar that you were expected to live, but you knew that you really couldn't, because you knew of your flaws and everything that you were working with as a human being. And so it's just like, okay, like, I will never be this, but you work really hard to be it, but you still come up short. And that whole thing of coming up short and having flaws and thinking that it was something that God was displeased with me for. And so the day that I tried to complete, I told God, I said, look, I'd rather die and go to hell today than to disappoint you another day on this earth. And I was ready to check out just because of that very fact. There were other factors as well, my upbringing and some things that had happened, just rejection and things of that nature. But all of that perpetuated this suicidal ideation. So,
okay. And how old were you with that first thought that you wanted to end your life? How old were you?
I was 4. I was 4 years old. I didn't know at that time what I was thinking. Like, I didn't know at that time what it really was. But I just knew that I wanted to die. I didn't want to be here anymore. I felt like my family didn't love me. I had walked in and heard my mom, and this is nothing against my mom. My mom was suffering with postpartum depression, and she really had a lot on her. So this is nothing against my mom. But I walked in and I heard my mother telling someone that she didn't want me. Now, as a 4-year-old, you don't understand that. As a 44-year-old, like I am right now, I understand. Like I said, she was stressed. She had a lot going on. She worked. My sister and I were 18 months apart. But a 4-year-old hearing that, it just shattered my life.
Mm-hmm. And I can understand that. The reason why I wanted to stress that point is because we have a lot of school-age children, elementary-age children that are suffering from traumatic experiences, and they don't really know what to say. So Candace, we're going to talk a little bit about your suicidal ideation. Can you tell our listeners what perpetuated your suicidal ideation?
I think that there were multiple things that perpetuated my suicide ideation, but like growing up as in church, it was being bullied at school, being bullied at home, being bullied at church, at home, at school, all of them, maybe sometimes all in the same day. But the main thing was when I was 12, I was sexually assaulted while on family vacation. And the guy just wouldn't leave me alone. Just constantly checked in or tried to, what's the word?
Harass you?
Yeah, to harass me, to make sure that I wouldn't tell nobody. He'd say, I'll kill you. I'll kill your family. I know where you live. And it just took a toll on me.
Wow. The bullying. A lot of kids are bullying, and I believe from hearing snippets of your story on other occasions, a lot of it was cyberbullying too, because the person did not live in the same state with you, so cyberbullying or whatever. And I know when you cannot talk to someone really about your suicidal ideation, that's a problem. I spoke with a mother whose young teenage son completed suicide, and I've heard other stories of suicide completion where people would say things like, well, they could have talked to me. I wish they would have said something to me if I only would have known. But what you got to understand is, how can you explain something that you don't fully understand yourself in reference of a child? A child does not understand what they are feeling, and especially young men from an early age, they're told, boy, don't cry, get up. He could be clearly bleeding out after he's fallen. And that's, boy, shut up, you tough. Or if he shows any type of emotion or that he's feeling any type of way, it's automatically shut down, and they're told to man up at 6, or younger. And that's unacceptable. So, and how many times, I know when I used to get beat by my mama, yes, beat. As soon as she say, I'm gonna give you something to cry for, then she give me something to cry for, and then she tell me to shut up afterwards. Like, that don't even make sense. You just said you was gonna give me something to cry for. Now you want me to shut up immediately afterwards. And I'm not the only one. During the era that I came up, those type of beat downs, that's what you got. And I'm not saying I didn't deserve some of them. I'm just saying what it is. Those type of things will cause you not to want to speak up. Those type of things will cause you not to want to disclose things, especially if you don't understand if you're the culprit, and you don't understand if you're going to get in trouble for it. If you don't understand what your consequences are, you'll shut down. And I hear Trisha saying about that. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, because the thing is that it breaks the spirit of a child. And once you break the spirit of a child, that child grows into an adult that doesn't know their worth. They don't know their value. They're full of rejection. Again, and I'll give this disclaimer, nothing against my parents. They did the best that they could do. But there was a lot there that unfortunately their best just wasn't enough in that moment. And there were things that I needed. You know, they did not know, but I was raped at 13 and a half. And so not being able to tell that to anyone and holding that. And then on top of that, you know, unfortunately, my father was very abusive. You know, that whole Christian spare the rod, spoil the child thing, you know, so we got the hell beat out of us for everything. You know what I mean? Well, I ain't gonna say us because I think I got the most whoopings, but and yeah, some I did deserve, but some I didn't, you know, and I just think that we really need to be careful what we do with our children, you know, because that's something that can last, an impression that can last in their life forever. And our children are completing suicide at 9, 8, 7 years old. It's getting younger and younger. So
I agree. I feel that there are far more questions about suicide than there are answers. So I'm hoping that during this show, we can answer some of those questions. We want to put the suicide prevention hotline out there, 1-800-273-8255 is the suicide prevention hotline. Again, 1-800-273-8255 or 1-800-273-TALK. So you can learn the warning signs, you know, someone talking about wanting to die or kill oneself, looking for a way to kill themselves, talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live, talking about feeling trapped, talking about unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others, an increase in the use of alcohol or drugs, acting anxious or agitated or behaving recklessly, all of a sudden, especially with a kid. You know, yes, John may have some bad behaviors, but John is also suffering for something. So instead of saying John is bad as hell, or, you know, I don't know what's wrong with him, you might want to ask yourself, what happened to John?
Oh my goodness, yes.
You know, what happened to John
Yes.
that would cause him to behave this way? What happened to him? Kids don't come in the world acting the way that they do. Some of those things are exacerbated by their home environment, allowed, and then other things is because of trauma.
Yes.
Trauma associated with something that has happened. So when you see a child acting out, don't automatically think that they're bad. And some kids are very mischievous and have a lot of anxiety and, you know, all of this stuff going on. So you have to be able to differentiate that. But it's nothing wrong with asking them what happened to them. Something traumatic could have happened to them. And the problem is we don't listen, especially in the church. As Candace and Trisha both shared, you know, growing up in a religiously controlled environment. And I'm not saying that that's all bad. You know, teaching your kid about spirituality, religious beliefs, and all of that. But don't get so focused on prayer is the answer and oil is the answer that you can't really get to the root of the problem that's going on with people. So we're going to prepare for our first break. We're going to hear a song called Days of Solace by Trisha Duckworth. I hope you enjoy it as much as we do, and we'll be back.
parts of me. Don't leave behind your me. Be patient and stop chasing the wrong thing. Behind the here and now. We can all have a future. Just gotta show you how. The truth will set you free and you will have ending days. Never ending days of happiness. Never ending days of sadness. Never ending days, ending days. This road ain't never easy. I don't care what they say, but as long as you keep walking, God will keep you with His grace. Every time you're feeling down, emotions come and go. And He's working really hard to keep you bound. The valley will not last. And you'll get to that place where you can have.
We were listening to Days of Solace by Trisha Duckworth and Vic Ballard, is it?
Yes.
And Vic Ballard. So we want to give a shout out to them. That is off their CD, Chosen Ones, and it is on iTunes, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so you can download the CD off iTunes, and we hope that you do. You will hear more of the tracks off the CD to come. But let's go on that Days of Solace. So when you're depressed, you have many days of chaos, and people will tell you, snap out of it, you're going to be okay, you're not. And stop saying that to people, because everyone's depression is in different forms, and you can't just pray them out of it. Don't think that they haven't tried. Some people who believe in the power of prayer, who believe in a power higher than themselves, whatever they call it, don't think that they have not talked to that deity. Don't think that they have not prayed. So if you encounter someone like that, to ask them just to pray or to talk to God about it, that is not enough. And you really sound stupid to them, and senseless or whatever. You're not helping. You're exacerbating the problem. If you don't understand it, leave it alone. If you can't show some compassion and love, leave it alone. But one thing about a person that is in suicidal ideation, they want to be listened to more than talked to. So the best thing you can do is to listen. And if you don't understand or agree, that's okay, because it's not about you. And one of the hardest things about listening attentively is just that. We are trained to listen to respond. When you are dealing with someone that has suicidal ideation, you're listening to understand, not to formulate a response. They don't need your opinion. They want to be listened to, and you don't have to do anything but direct them to the suicidal hotline if you don't know what to do. And that number again is 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. So when you get into a tight place and everything goes against you, and it seems like you can't hang on a minute longer, the tide turned. So let's start with Candace, because you got to a place where you seem like you just couldn't hold on a minute longer.
Yep.
Tell us about that moment, and tell us how that tide turned. What changed your mind?
I think the moment was, I guess, not having nobody to turn to. Every day processing this stuff and getting through the day by yourself. So I had drove down to the Detroit Riverwalk, and I was sitting on the railing about to jump in. And it's just like something came over me. I just froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go back. And all I heard was, just let it go. I got it. Everything's going to be okay. So I sat there for a few minutes. I did. I sat there and then I got down because I think it was going to be harder, me thinking about my parents and the people that, said they loved me. And then, for me to go through this stuff, then for them to lose me and not know why.
Yeah, because, the people that you leave behind, suicide is not the answer. It's a perceived answer to the problem. But like I said earlier, that also leaves a lot of unanswered questions for the people who are left behind. So, Trisha, let's talk about, you were in this tight place. You arrived there. You said you were having ideation since the age of 4. So now, how old are you when you get to the point where you want to end it all? And can you tell the audience a little bit about that, or the listeners a little bit about that?
So I think I was somewhere around, how am I now? It's probably like 33, 34.
Okay.
And before I started school or anything like that, and I kind of was just at a point where it was just in a cycle of going to church, and that was it. And it just wasn't enough. So again, stop telling people to pray and to go to church and to do this and do that, because I did all of that and it still was not soothing the pain. So, and at that time I was under a pastor who was just very and this was a different church, but he was just very he would call people little dumb, silly flesh creatures. And
What?
I mean, he was just very verbally abusive to people when he knew that they would fall in sin, or he would just say stuff across the pulpit that he knew people were struggling with. I mean, he was just horrible. When he was struggling, well, never mind. I ain't gonna tell you what he was struggling with.
Yeah, say that for the Church Hurt Show. Coming soon, the Church Hurt Show, featuring Trisha.
However, I allowed that, sitting under that and digesting that into my spirit. Went home one day and I was just like, you know what, God, I'm serious. I would rather die and go to hell right now than to displease you another day on earth. And so at that time I had a pistol grip Mossberg pump. I cocked it and I put it in my mouth, and I wasn't no cry for help. I don't even think I had Facebook then. I didn't call nobody. I didn't leave no notes. I just wanted to be done. And right at that moment, I went to put my finger on the trigger, and I began to feel only thing I can equate it to is angel wings or something. I don't know. It was just so heavy around my entire body, and it was just squeezing me. And I got scared, oh my goodness, what is this, And I released my hand back from the trigger area, and it let up. And I began to hear God tell me, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. I have a plan for your life. Just trust me. And I'm crying because I'm my life is horrible. And I'm telling God all this. And he was like, just trust me. Just trust me. I have a plan. And from that point on, I started school. I started at Washtenaw Community College. And God just started to guide me through to my true destiny and who I was in him, not on a religious tip, because I'm not of any religion. I just love God and that's it. You know what I mean? But I began to know God for myself. And so I was no longer being religiously abused. And that gave me the will to live and to reach towards my destiny.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Candace, what you got down off of the bridge, but what were some of the steps you took to be able to move forward to get to where you are now?
Actually, right after I fell into a deep depression. So I wouldn't eat, sleep. I just lay there and cry. But I think I needed that for a while. But I finally, told my mom about what happened, and she actually reached out to you, and you met with me, and you didn't talk, you just listened to everything I was going through. So having somebody there to listen to me, to actually listen, and not tell me, like Trisha said, to pray, just pray everything gonna be okay, or you'll get through it, you'll be all right. Just actually having somebody there to listen and to actually, be there with me in the moment, kind of helped me through.
The first time I heard you say that I was instrumental in saving your life and breaking that ideation, it really threw me for a loop, because I did not have a clue in this world what you were experiencing or what you were going through. So I'm glad that we both have gotten through that part of the story without being so emotional. I'm kind of glad I didn't know, because to tell you the truth, at that juncture, I don't know how I really would have been able to handle that, knowing you and being as close to you as I am, to be able to handle that if I actually knew,
Yeah.
So just to be able to talk to you just out of the kindness of my heart, learning to listen, to hear and understand, and to just try to get to that place where you were. And it took me to a dark place where I had been, so I had to do some healing myself in order to continue to walk with Candace to heal. So I said all of that to say, broken people can't help other broken people. When she was sharing with me, I began to share with her, and I asked her to come back a week later, still not knowing that she wanted to take her life. I did not know that, but I knew that what we were discussing was something that I had an issue with most of my life. And it was no way I could talk to her about that until I've healed myself. So I took that week to dig deep inside of myself and get rid of some of my childhood adverse experiences before I could come back to her and say anything. So those of you out there, broken people cannot help other broken people. And I'm going to say that again. Broken people cannot help other broken people. So that brings me to this next thing, because the church is full of broken people. It's the broken people hospital, right? To me, I say the church is for the spiritually sick, and people can agree with me and they can disagree with me. I'm not looking for consensus. I'm saying what I think. This black coffee.
I said what I said.
Yeah, like I'm saying what I think about it based on my experiences or whatever. And we all have some healing that we need to do, but the church is the place where that's supposed to take place.
Yeah.
That's a place where you should go, and you should be able to be spiritually and emotionally naked and come in there as you are, and to be able to leave out a different person. Some churches that happens, and you can, and they are equipped and they can help you, and others are not. So, Trisha, can we talk about the role that the church did or did not play in your healing process?
It's quite unfortunate for me to say this, but it is the truth, and that's what God loves, and that's what I'm going to stand on. Back then, the church, what's the word you use?
Exacerbated.
Yes. It kind of it did not help. I already had feelings of, just not being reaffirmed and things like that in the home. And then to go to church, and then it's like the same thing. It was just like, let me say this. We have to make our environments conducive to true healing. What happens is we want people to come in and act as if they're saved and they're sanctified. Now they're filled with the Holy Ghost, and now that's it. No, people have a lifetime of things that they have to heal from, and that is from the inside out, and it's not done in a millisecond. Sometimes it takes years. Some things God heals instantly, but it is a journey, and it is people's journey. It's their journey alone. It's personal, and it's a personal relationship with God. And we have to stop setting these bars of perfection for people, because we are really setting people up. we're not being honest, because we're expecting all of these things out of people when we know that we're not living that life ourselves. So for me, I just say an individual just has to be honest. I don't care if you haven't healed from everything, but if you're real and you're honest about where you're at and about where you're going, then I can learn something from you. It's the person that acts as if they have everything all together, and that's what makes that environment one where it's just persecution, persecution, persecution. Nobody can live under that. Nobody.
I agree. And I've experienced a lot of church hurt. We're going to do a whole show on church hurt. But for the scope of this show, the churches need to become more equipped to deal with mental illness and depression and anxiety and suicide, because historically, you know, we were taught to go to the church. The church was everything from our forefathers and slavery, you know, prayer and spiritual healing and all of these things. So people are going to come to the church for that comfort. And then you got Sister Messy starting mess, and Deacon do wrong, thinking he can tell you to do right. That don't work. Some of these people need to be set down, and some of these churches need to be shut down. You know, they're doing a lot more harm than good.
That's right.
And a church shouldn't just be a building in the community. The community should be able to come in your church and receive that healing and all of the other things that should happen. I can say that my pastor, not because he's my leader and my pastor, but I will say that because I've been going to my church for about 30 years, and I can say he doesn't go around and try to act like he's perfect. And, you know, I have a great relationship with him, and he understands. I remember I was going through a deep anxiety. I have anxiety. And I had called him, and he came over my mom's house to see me. And I remember I was just reading the Bible. He said, Sister Kelly, because I wasn't married at the time, how long you been reading that Bible? I said all day. He was like, put it down. Put it down. Because it's going to take more than that to get you well. Put it down. So he was being real with me. I didn't have to, I'm not going to find the answer in the word, you know, or whatever. Let's pray, you know. And he'll tell you quick, you need some medicine, take your medicine. He will tell you quick, if you're in an abusive relationship, get out. He's not going to say, I'm going to pray for you. You know, you got married for the better or for worse. If somebody is being abusive to you, get out. And that's what pastors need to do. Tell people the truth. And if they're struggling, it was a pastor, 2 weeks ago that killed himself.
Yeah, and he battled for years with suicide.
So pastors, it is okay if you have depression or suicide and you feel like you don't want to pastor no more and you want to do whatever it is that you want to do, sit down. God knows your heart and he knows you. We are putting on so many airs. You will not be considered as a failure in my sight if you are a pastor, a leader, or anything, and you decide to step out of that role because you cannot take it anymore. Save yourself and your family. Pastors run around carrying the burden of everyone's family and can't even address their own issues and their depression. They're going through something also. And it is okay to seek help or to sit down. You know, Candace, can you say what things about religion or church helped you, and then what things about it hurt you?
Honestly, you know, I grew up born and raised in the church. My dad's a deacon. My mom's a Sunday school teacher. At the time, my uncle was a pastor. And not just that, I had, you know, my grandmother was very, you know, well known in our church affiliation. So praying, you know, having somebody, you know, at those times when you couldn't have somebody actually there, you know, to listen to you, or somebody there that would want to listen to you, knowing that, you know, being taught that he hears everything and he listens to you, and you just gotta wait and He'll come through, on time.
Yeah, because I look at that prayer as like a meditation, and what I like about both your stories is the transparency that faith without works. So you had the faith piece, but you put in some work, and that work wasn't necessarily just with you. You found other people that could come into your life and embrace you and help you get past that moment.
And counseling.
Yeah. Yeah, especially you hear that in the black neighborhood? Counseling, because church is our everything. You're told to go to the church and pray. You get the prayer circle going, and they holding hands and making a ring around you or whatever they do. That's cool. Altar call, whatever. I'm not saying I don't participate in those things, and I don't say I have not done those things, and I won't say that I won't do them again. But I tell you what, when I walk out of that church door, I still have my anxiety that I'm living with. Yep. And so there are some things that I have to do outside of those church walls that are more important, because see, I have 6 other days and a whole bunch, 6 days and about 22 hours before I'm back in church again.
Right.
That's a long time. Now, I could stop by for a little fill-up on Wednesday for Bible study, so that's just an hour. Or prayer, that's another hour. So 4 hours out of 6.5 or more days that I'm dealing with this.
You know what? It makes it almost a dependency. Because you're taught to go to church, go to church, go to church, go to church. You have to learn how to establish your relationship with God for yourself. It may be a time where, especially with this crazy president we got right now, they might close all church doors. What do you do then? You have to have your own relationship established with God. But unfortunately, everybody looks to the pastor for pretty much everything nowadays. In some churches, not all churches, because there are churches, let me say this, give a disclaimer here. There are some churches out here that are getting it right. Embassy Covenant Church International with Bishop Hugh Daniel Smith, he equips people to do just what we're talking about, to deal with the spiritual aspect, but also to know that we're human. And we do need things like counseling, and some people might need medicine and other different things like that. So that whole faith without works piece, it is very relevant to speak about.
I agree. And, I'll say the same thing. I didn't give my pastor a shout out. But I will say, Pastor Arthur Willis Pentecost Missionary Baptist Church in Greater Middle Church. Not a perfect pastor, but a good pastor. Yeah. And he'll call me right now and say, Sister Bonnie, you been taking your medicine? Because he know I'm busy. Sister Bonnie, you been getting some rest? He'll call me just out of nowhere. He doesn't wait until I come through the door on Sunday or Wednesday. He will pick that phone up and say, Sister Bonnie, you been getting some rest? I've been seeing you on Facebook. He been lurking my page. And he'll call me, you've been getting your rest, but that's needed.
Yeah.
That's needed. He understands the faith without work part. Yeah. And I have met Pastor Daniels. They get it, and there are many more that get it. Your brother, Pastor Duckworth.
Yeah.
They get it.
Very big.
Yeah,
on that.
Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church, Pastor
Shout
Duckworth.
out, bro.
They get it, and there are many more, that get it. But the point here is this. Equip yourselves and some of your church members to be able to let it go. That whole let go and let God thing, that's true, but you got to put your work in. So that's the perfect segue to another track by Trisha Duckworth and Vic Ballard called Let It Go.
Victory 24/7 is a stage name.
Okay. Here we go.
Trying to take my life, memories I can't hide. It was so long ago.
a place with many parts. Some are players, some are sharks. Broken minds, broken hearts. Admitting that is where it starts. Recognizing who they are and don't let it go too far. Get that demon out your car and don't look back or there'll be scars.
No matter how far down you fall, there's a great purpose to it all. It's all a part of God's plan to get you to a place where you can stand. Every time I think about the pain and all the life lessons that I gained, changed my thoughts and now I'm free, free to walk into my destiny. My spirit's now free and I'm giving thanks. Thankful I can finally breathe again. I feel like going on, 'cause I let it go. Gotta let it go. Gotta let it go. Gotta let it go. The pain, regret, the guilt, the shame, it's all a part of the enemy's game to distract you from God's plan for you.
Yeah, see what we want ain't always best. Trust in God and worry less. Crossing fingers, holding breaths, a waste of time at best. Good character comes with tests, and when your life's a mess, just don't hold on to pain and stress. Just let it go, and you'll be blessed.
And we're back. We were listening to Let It Go, and in that previous segment, we were talking about ways you can let it go. And, you know, letting go and let God is something that we've heard a lot for people who believe in God. You know, there are other people who do not. But there are some other ways that you could let it go also, through meditation, through counseling, through a myriad of things. But one thing is you have to get rid of the toxicity in your life and get to some solace, some peace within yourself, and finding how to get there. There are plenty of ways to do it, but if you want some help, you can call the Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-273-TALK. That is 1-800-273-8255. You will be on hold for a while, about an hour. You know, so I don't want you to think that you're going to get right in and be distraught. You know, it's a very cumbersome system. I believe that's just a sign to show how many people are struggling with this particular situation. However, once you get through, you definitely should be able to get some of the help you need. And you can also call the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority at 1-800-241-4949 right here in the city of Detroit. And that is 1-800-241-4949, where they have a plethora of resources and mental health resources that they will definitely connect you through once they finish the screening with you and decide how it is that they can help. And we will also give a shout out to them because the agency that we run, SOAR, the funding to operate comes from Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority. So a huge shout out for everyone at the authority, for all 72 prevention and treatment providers that they have. They've been a great benefit to us to do some of the work that we do in prevention at SOAR. So, Trisha, Let It Go. What was the inspiration behind that song?
One of the biggest things that I could say that kept the suicidal ideation going was all of the baggage that I carried. So the feelings of the rejection, the value, not feeling valued, you know, the rape, the religious control, all of these things. I mean, all of these things I'm packing. Reminds me of what's the girl's name? Erykah Badu.
Bag lady.
Bag lady. I was a bag lady.
Hit a
I had
verse
all
for
of
me.
bag lady, you gonna miss your But no, seriously, I was carrying so much baggage. And at some point, you got to start to unpack. You got to start to unpack that through ways of counseling, just dealing with it. See, the thing is, we are not taught to go to the core of ourselves. We're taught to just, you know, we look right on the outside and the surface and everything's okay. But I had to go to the core of myself and see what really was going on. And once I began to unpack that and start to let some of that stuff go, I began to live. And then I began to replace it. So once you unpack that bad thing, you can replace it with things in your destiny. So I started out, I was doing radio. I started acting, just doing all this stuff in college. And I mean, all of these things that I would have never dreamed that I could do, but I had unpacked all of that baggage. So I had nothing else holding me back from God's will for my life.
Wow, that was powerful. One thing that Candace did say is she was thinking about her parents and other people that loved her that she would have left behind. The person who completes suicide dies once. Those left behind die 1,000 deaths, trying to relive those terrible moments and understand why. They often wonder if it was something they can do. And I will say this. When a person hits a certain point of depression and you try to help them, if they complete suicide after that, it's not necessarily your fault. Depression is like a serious illness. There are some things you can do that can depress the person further. You know, I believe there are some things that you say that can exacerbate their situation if you don't know exactly what to say. And that's why we keep saying, if you don't know exactly what to say, call Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority, 1-800-241-4949, or call, which is a 24-hour line as well, or call the Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255, because if you're not really equipped to help, you can hurt. And whether or not you're intending to hurt or not, you can. And so let's talk about a little bit about some of the things you can do, which is a program that we do through SOAR, and we can come to your location and do called QPR. The Q is for question, the P is for persuade, and the R is for refer. And if you would like a free 90-minute QPR workshop and you live in Wayne County, you can call SOAR at 734-697-9511. Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority provides the funding for these free 90-minute QPR workshops within the Wayne County area. Now, if you're out of Wayne County, we'll come anyway, but if you're so far away, we would love a love offering for our gas. We have driven some places and got to thank you after we've driven like a while, but in all seriousness, we go everywhere. Yeah. But just to let you know, Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority does fund us to do QPR workshops, and the first year we did it, we trained about 225 pastors. Was that correct?
People, church.
People in the church. Mm-hmm. We targeted the church. So if you're a church, a leader in the church, or a member of a church, and you're listening, we would love to come and do QPR to teach you how to ask that question. Mm-hmm. What do you say? How do you ask the question? You know, to teach you how to persuade the person that there is hope. You know, and the persuasion part comes with intense listening to their story, though, not to persuade them to believe the way that you believe, to understand how they believe, what they're feeling, and what is important to them, because you have to take what is important to them in order to persuade them that there is some hope to carry on. And then the refer is to refer them to resources where they can get help. Again, Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority, 1-800-241-4949, or the Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. So we have had an interesting talk about suicide, and as we prepare to close this Power Pack hour, is there anything that you would like to share, Candace, that we did not cover, or any words of encouragement or hope that you would like to say to people within your age group especially, right? So different things impact different people at different ways at different ages. So, you know, you're still in your 20s. Is this something that you can say to someone and give advice to someone in their 20s who may be suffering from suicidal ideation?
I think the one thing that I would say, I like to say it all the time, is to find somebody to talk to And if that person doesn't want to listen, then move on to the next person until you find somebody that will talk to you or will listen to you and will be there for you. And stay strong, keep your head up. You know, it doesn't get better overnight, but I think every day or every week or every month that goes by, it gets easier. And you'll make it through.
Well, thank you for that. And when she said if that person doesn't want to listen, find somebody else, that is true. Even with therapy, you know, you're not going to walk in the door. You know, the first couple of sessions of therapy, you should feel a little worse than better because they're triggering some of the dark, deep emotional things that you're experiencing, and that's going to cause some PTSD and some other things. But if you've been there 6 weeks and you don't feel better, that therapist is not for you. Move on. Find someone else. You wouldn't keep going back to the barber if they was messing up your hairline. You know, so you got to find somebody that is right for you.
Yeah.
Period. Point blank. You know, keep finding somebody, keep looking until you find somebody that is right for you. Trisha, is there anything that you would like to say that we did not cover, or any words of encouragement that you would like to give a listener in our audience?
You might not be able to find anybody to talk to sometimes, and that's when you really have to dig deep inside of yourself and find your own will to live. I didn't have this testimony that I could find really anybody to talk to. And I tell people all the time, I feel like God saved me himself. He literally came down out of the heavens and just embraced me and let me know that his love was there. Sometimes people will never understand, but as long as you can understand yourself and you have a relationship with God, and even if you don't, even if you are not a religious person, you can fight for your life. You can fight for yourself and just rise up and know that you have a purpose. Every one of us was born with a purpose. So you have a reason to live. And if you haven't found that reason yet, I beg you to just dig deep. It's already there, because everything we need, we came here with. We look outside of ourselves because that's what we were trained to do. But stop looking out, look in, and grow from there.
I agree. So you have been listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie, and we talked about suicide tonight. And again, the goal of Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk is not to spill the tea or to make you feel dazed like you had a cheap shot of liquor. It's to articulate strong, truthful, and powerful statements to make you hear, to make you feel, and to make you see the world from a different point of view. That will be all for us tonight, Detroit, and in the Virgin Islands, and wherever you're tuning in from. This has been Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, Straight Talk with Valerie, and we're leaving out on God is Good. God is So Good by Trisha Duckworth and Vic Ballard. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.